The Book of Revelation. Just saying, it brings to mind all these terrifying images, right? Beasts, plagues, the whole world ending in fire. It's a book that launched 1,000 doomsday theories and left most of us feeling deeply confused and maybe a little scared. For centuries, we've treated it like a crystal ball, a divine roadmap to the end of the world. But what if that was never the point? What if the fear and confusion are just a side effect of fundamentally misunderstanding what this book is even about? When you hear Revelation, your brain probably jumps to apocalypse, as in the end of everything. But the book's very first word in the original Greek is and it doesn't mean end of the world. It means an unveiling or a revealing. So the real question is, what was its author, a man named John, trying to unveil? A literal blueprint of the 21st century? Or was he pulling back the curtain to give a heavenly perspective on his time? A coded message to give his persecuted friends a hope that couldn't be shaken. This series is going to explore a different way of reading Revelation. That it is a powerful work of resistance. A coded letter written to first-century Christians to give them courage in the face of violent Roman oppression. This isn't a book of fear, it's a book of hope. And over the next few videos, we're going to decode it, chapter by chapter, to uncover the message it had for the people it was written for. To do that, we have to get inside their world. Before we even touch chapter 1, we need the 3 keys that unlock the entire book. The first key is getting a handle on the book's genre. Revelation is what scholars call apocalyptic literature. If you've never heard that term, you're not alone. As a way of writing, it's a lost art. Nobody really writes like this anymore, which is exactly why it feels so strange to us. Apocalyptic writing was a popular style in Jewish culture for about 400 years, from around 300 BC to 100 AD, and it always popped up in times of crisis. When a brutal empire was crushing your people, you couldn't just pass out a pamphlet saying, "The emperor is evil and God is going to take him down." That would get you killed. So, you wrote in code, you used these wild, symbolic visions, strange creatures, and cosmic battles to tell the story of what was happening on Earth from heaven's point of view. Think of it like a modern political cartoon. You see a donkey and an elephant squaring off. You instantly know it's about political parties. You get the code. Apocalyptic literature worked the same way. It used a shared library of symbols, mostly pulled from Old Testament books like Daniel, Ezekiel, and Zechariah, to get a powerful message across. Yes, things are terrible right now. Yes, it looks like evil is winning, but God is still in control. He sees what you're going through, and he will get the last word. It was a literature of hope for the hopeless, a way of staring oppression in the face and declaring that God's kingdom wins in the end. So, who wrote this coded message, and who was reading it? The author tells us his name is John, and he's writing from the island of Patmos, a Roman penal colony. He says he was exiled there because of the word of God and the testimony of Jesus. He was, for all intents and purposes, a political prisoner. He is writing to 7 real churches in 7 real cities in the Roman province of Asia, what we now call modern-day Turkey. These weren't make-believe churches. They were actual groups of people in cities like Ephesus, Smyrna, and Laodice, and they were in deep trouble. Most historians believe John was writing around 95 AD, during the reign of Emperor Domitian. Domitian was a particularly cruel ruler who insisted on being called Dominus, et Deus, Lord and God. This put Christians in an impossible position. The whole Roman Empire was held together by what was called the imperial cult. It wasn't just about being a loyal citizen. You had a religious duty to offer sacrifices and worship the emperor as a god. For Christians, whose core belief was that Jesus alone is Lord, that was a line they couldn't cross. but refusing to participate was seen as treason. It could mean losing your business, having your home taken away, or being put to death. They were stuck, feeling the squeeze between assimilating into Roman culture just to survive and staying faithful to Jesus, no matter what it cost them. It's to these people, in this specific moment of crisis, that John sends his apocalypses unveiling. He's not trying to predict things 2,000 years in their future. He's giving them a survival guide for their present. Once you have the genre and the history down, the symbols start to click. They aren't random. They're the vocabulary of this coded language. So when John sees 144,000 people being saved, he's not giving a literal head count for heaven. He's taking 12 times 1,000, to symbolically say, the entire family of God, from the Old and New Covenants, will be safe. Let's look at a few of the big ones. This is obviously Jesus, but the image is so important. He doesn't win with brute force. He wins through sacrificial love. This beast is a terrifying mashup of animals from the book of Daniel, and it represents violent, godless, Rome. The blasphemous names on its heads were the divine titles the emperors demanded. The name became shorthand for any arrogant, godless empire. And ring that notification bell, because in the next video, we re-jumping into chapter 1. We meet John on Patmos and witnessed his incredible vision of the risen Jesus, ready to deliver his messages to the churches. The journey through Revelation isn't about predicting the headlines. It's about understanding the past so we can find courage in the present. It's about realizing that the struggles of those first-century Christians, the pressure to compromise, the pain of suffering, the temptation to give up hope aren't so different from our own, and the message of hope that got them through is the same one that can get us through. That no matter how dark things look, the kingdom of our God and of his Christ will reign forever and ever. I'll see you in the next video, as we start the journey, chapter by chapter. In Revelation, Babylon the Great is a clear code word for Rome. The new empire that had destroyed the Second Temple in 70 AD and was now coming after Christians. So, with these three keys in hand, the apocalyptic genre, the Roman persecution, and the symbolic code, we are ready. We can stop reading Revelation as a book that predicts our future in terrifying detail and start reading it as it was always meant to be read, as a letter of profound hope. A letter that pulls back the curtain to show that behind all the smoke and mirrors of imperial power, God is on his throne, and the slain Lamb has already won the victory that matters. The four living creatures around God's throne represent all of creation worshipping him. People have spent centuries trying to pin this on popes or politicians, but John gives a clue. He says it's the number of a man, using a common Jewish practice called gematria, where letters also have number values. The Hebrew letters for the name Nero Caesar add up to 666. Nero was the first emperor to brutally persecute Christians, and even though he was dead when John was writing, a popular myth said he was going to come back to life. For John's readers, Nero was the ultimate symbol of evil, monstrous power. So 666 wasn't a mystery for the distant future. It was a clear signal to his first-century audience, identifying the kind of evil they were up against. Numbers in Revelation are almost never about literal quantities. They're about symbolic quality. 7 is everywhere it shows up, over 50 times. It means completeness or perfection, inspired by the 7-day creation story. So, when John writes to 7 churches, he's really writing to the whole church. The 7 seals, 7 trumpets, and 7 bowls. They represent the completeness of God's justice. 12 stands for the people of God. You have the 12 tribes of Israel and the 12 apostles of the Lamb. 4 represents the created world. The 4 corners of the earth, the four winds, then you have the major players. The hero of the story is a slain lamb. The main villain is a dragon, who John flat out tells us is Satan, the serpent from the Garden of Eden. The dragon gives his power to a beast from the sea. And what about the infamous number 666? Finally, there's Babylon. In the Old Testament, Babylon was the evil empire that destroyed Jerusalem and the temple. If this way of looking at Revelation is helpful to you, make sure you subscribe.